Well, more Latin. And again, boy, I wish I knew Latin, and I wish we all knew Latin. I think it'd be a better world. The Latin I'm referring to here is a priori. This is a sort of very useful, if sometimes vague, philosophical concept, and it is one that Russell introduces here in a sort of a key way in this chapter, chapter 7, on our knowledge of general principles. What does a priori mean, and why is Russell using it? Well, you'll see at a certain point that Russell refers to an old argument, an old difference in the history of philosophy between the philosophers whom he calls empiricists and the ones that he calls rationalists. And the way that he puts it, empiricists, and empiricist comes from the Greek word empireia, which means experience. To be an empiricist in the most thoroughgoing way, philosophically, is to believe that all our knowledge comes from experience, and usually that means sense experience. To be a rationalist and ratio thought or thinking is a way of characterizing philosophers who believe that there is a way of getting knowledge without reference to experience. In fact, to be a thoroughgoing, an extreme rationalist would mean that we can discover all truths about the world simply by thinking. That is, apart from our experience, apart from what Russell would call the data that we're given through sense, our sense data. And Russell, as he goes on with this, really is kind of wants it both ways. He is both an empiricist and a rationalist in the sense that he believes that there are certain truths, and these he calls the truths of existence, about the things that exist, the particular things in the world, that the only way we can find out about things that exist is through our experience, through the senses. That is, we all believe that the moon, Earth's moon, exists. And the only reason that we believe that the Earth's moon exists is through various particular experiences we've had, whether looking at it, reading about it, looking at pictures, hearing stories, etc. So our knowledge of the Earth's moon, at least that it exists, and certain basic things about it perhaps, is wholly dependent upon our experience. Whereas there are other things, and here this is again the subject of the chapter, general principles, which we can know apart from experience. So Russell is kind of half an empiricist and half a rationalist. And his big claim here, I think, is that there are certain things that we can know without reference to experience, and those things, if indeed we know them, would be our a priori knowledge. Again, my Latin is non-existent. I know, as much as the average person does, I guess, in terms of Latin roots and things like that. But I think that the helpful thing in trying to understand what a priori means is to focus on the prior part of a priori. That is, prior to what? Prior to experience. And in Russell's way of thinking about it, logically independent of experience. That is, there are some things which I know before I experience anything. Now, I may not become aware that I know them. And here Plato rears his head in terms of, you may remember, certain theories of knowledge as recollection. But Russell is a kind of a Platonist, and at least insofar as he believes that there are certain things that we know apart from experience, that we know simply by reflecting upon experience. We find that there are certain principles that are there that we have not derived from experience, that in a way we have brought to experience. And those are the things that we know a priori. Let's look at that. He says the phrase a priori, as opposed to innate ideas, is less objectionable and is more usual in modern writers. Thus, while admitting that all knowledge is elicited and caused by experience, that is, our knowledge is somehow or another stimulated by that we are made aware of things through experience, we shall nevertheless hold that some knowledge is a priori, in the sense that the experience which makes us think of it does not suffice to prove it, but merely so directs our attention that we see its truth without requiring any proof from experience. The notion there is that there are certain truths, and here the laws of logic are quite prominent, that we know simply by thinking about ourselves and the world, without that knowledge or that truth depending upon our experience of ourselves or the world. So again, it might be good to dwell on another thing. If we go back to the very beginning again of the book and ask ourselves how Russell began, in Appearance and Reality, Chapter 1, he asks, is there any knowledge in the world which is so certain that no reasonable man could doubt it? Yes, there is. What kind of knowledge would that be? Knowledge of concepts. No reasonable man, for instance, would doubt the laws of logic. No reasonable man would doubt, for instance, that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Another example of what Russell calls a priori knowledge. All the kind of knowledge that we get in mathematics, according to Russell, is a priori, not dependent upon experience, but somehow or another prior to experience.